Welcome to Son of a Glitch. Join us as we explore some of the internet's craziest glitch stories. Story 1. My bracelet is different now, and it's freaking me out. Hi all. I'm not sure if this really fits here, but I just need to get it off my chest. The story starts with a bracelet. It's a silver cuff bracelet, pretty simple, smooth, and engraved with 3 small words at the very center. It reads, "She is free." When I bought it at a women's conference back in January, there were no other markings anywhere on it. The inside of the band was completely blank. I loved it because it felt clean and purposeful, like a mantra I could wear without it screaming for attention. I wore it basically every day for a couple weeks. It got that soft, warm look metal gets when it's actually being used, tiny hairline scuffs and a little bit of skin oil, nothing dramatic. Then by mid-February it was gone. Gone. I did the normal panic routine. Checked the bathroom counter, under the bed, in the laundry hamper, the pockets of every coat I own, the lining of my tote. I shook out sheets, crawled around on the floor with my phone flashlight like a raccoon, and checked the car I actually drive. Nothing. I kept thinking maybe I took it off at the gym, or that it slid behind my dresser. Days went by. I emptied my drawers. I even opened the vacuum cleaner canister, disgusting, just in case. Eventually I assumed it was lost for good, and tried to let it go, the way you have to do with socks and bobby pins and sanity. I told myself it was just an object. Still, every time I left the house, my wrist felt naked. Then not long ago, I found it again. It wasn't dramatic. I was cleaning out the front seat of this old car I'd been restoring on and off, my on-again, off-again project, and there it was lying on the cracked vinyl like it had been placed there gently. This is not my daily car. This is the car that mostly sits covered in dust while I hoard parts and watch too many tutorial videos. I never took that car to the conference. I never wore that bracelet while working on it. There was no version of events where the bracelet should have been anywhere near that front seat. I picked it up and instantly knew it was mine from the weight and the little scuff near the edge. But then I noticed something else, and my stomach dropped. It wasn't just my bracelet anymore. My nickname, something only close friends use, was engraved on the inside of one side of the band. On the other side, the date, February 17th, was etched into the metal. No year. No little heart or love, whoever. Just the date. The engraving looked professional, like it had been done at a jeweler. Clean, centered, not scratchy. I stood there, half bent into the car, flabbergasted, just staring at it. I turned it over and over in my hands, trying to remember if I'd ever even joked about getting it customized. I hadn't. And that date, February 17th. It doesn't mean anything specific to me. No birthdays, no anniversaries, no horrible memories I've blocked out. It's just a date I've always felt drawn to for some reason. I've always liked the number 17. I've always had a weird connection to February. That's not proof of anything. It just made it creepier. I tried to logic my way through it. Maybe a friend took it to be nice? But who would go into the storage car to leave it there? The windows were rolled up. The doors were locked. The car hadn't moved. I checked the garage security camera just in case. Of course it decided to be offline that day. Why wouldn't it? I texted 2 people who knew about the bracelet. They thought I was messing with them. I put it on and it fit exactly the way it used to, that snug cuff feeling cool against my skin. The original "She is free" engraving looked untouched, like it had always been there. The new engravings felt like a message that skipped context. I kept trying to attach meaning to it. Maybe February 17th is when I lost it? I checked old messages and photos, nope. Maybe it's when it came back? It wasn't. The more I looked, the less I could tether it to anything. I know this probably sounds small compared to some of the other stories here, but this unsettled me in a very specific way. The bracelet I lost and the bracelet I found are the same one, same weight, same scuff, and yet not the same, because it now contains information that no one put there. Or if someone did, then they went out of their way to sneak into a car I don't drive, engrave a weirdly personal date, and leave no other trace. That explanation is almost weirder. I keep coming back to this feeling that reality hiccuped. Like I dropped the bracelet in one version of my life, and picked it up in a slightly adjacent one where it never went missing, and also got engraved for some reason. I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm saying that's the only thing that makes my brain stop spinning for 5 seconds. Anyway, I don't know what to do with it other than wear it, and try not to stare at the date every time I catch the light. She is free. Maybe. But from what? From losing things? From caring? From explanations? I don't know. I just needed to tell somebody. Story 2. I saw reality tear. This one is strange, and it just happened yesterday. We were doing a concrete pour that morning, big slab, outdoor job, form's already set, rebar tied, that kind of day where everything's a little rushed no matter how early you start. We had the chute swinging, guys with rakes moving the mud, and I'm riding the edge trying not to step where I'll sink. Halfway through, I noticed something odd. My right sleeve was ripped. Now I already had a small tear on the left sleeve from last month. I remember thinking, oh great, now both sides are trashed. The new one was a clean triangular rip, maybe 3 inches across at the widest point, flapping in the breeze enough that I could see skin underneath. I couldn't remember when it happened. There was no rip sound, no snag moment, nothing. Just suddenly I looked down and there it is, like it had always been there. I assumed I'd caught it on a screw or a nail poking from one of the plywood forms. The pour gets chaotic, guys calling out elevations, someone tripping over a hose, the pump belching air, so I didn't think much of it. I just rolled with it, literally, because I was on the bull float a minute later. I even remember being careful not to widen the tear when I reached across to grab a trowel. The edge of the triangle kept brushing my forearm. I saw concrete splash onto my skin through that opening. It stung a little, that mild chemical burn feeling, but it wasn't a big deal at the time. We wrapped up, edged, broomed, cleaned tools. I went home beat, took the shirt off carefully. I remember that very specifically, holding the torn part so it wouldn't rip worse, and tossed it on the chair in my room. Shower, food, couch coma. End of story, I thought. Next morning I grabbed the same shirt off the chair, because I'm not winning any fashion awards, and it's just work, right? I freeze. The tear on the right sleeve is gone. Not repaired, gone. No stitch marks, no loose threads, no stretched fabric. The sleeve is whole like it came fresh off a rack. The old small tear on the left side is still there, exactly as I remembered it, but the right sleeve is flawless. Now I'm standing there talking to myself in my bedroom like a crazy person. I check the floor, check the chair, check inside the sleeve thinking maybe it folded weird and I'm missing it. I pull the shirt on and off 3 times. It's unbroken. Then I look at my arm and feel my stomach drop. 3 faint concrete burns, little pale pink shapes, exactly where the missing triangle of fabric would have been. Not random smudges. Not some old scratch. 3 marks forming a triangular pattern. I touch them and they sting just enough to say, hey, we're new. I put the shirt on backwards to test if I had somehow flipped it the day before. Instantly uncomfortable, collar wrong, and the spot still didn't line up with the burns. I stare at the sleeve hem, and seems like I'm going to catch them lying. I pull on another shirt to compare stitching. Everything on the fixed sleeve looks identical to factory, like nobody ever cut it. Like nobody ever could have cut it. I spend way too long trying to logic it out. Did I own 2 identical shirts and mix them up? No, there's a faint paint smear on the back shoulder that's unique to this one. Did someone break into my place at night to tailor one sleeve with invisible thread and then leave? Sure, okay. Did I dream the tear? I can still feel the way air hit my skin through it, how I adjusted my grip to avoid catching the flap while floating the edge. And I have the burns. I even checked the truck because that's how ridiculous my brain got, like maybe the torn shirt fell there and this is a different one. Nothing. I asked a coworker if he remembered seeing my sleeve ripped yesterday. He squinted, tried to rewind, said, maybe? You were covered in dust, man. Super helpful. So now I'm stuck with this. Yesterday there was a triangular hole in my sleeve, and today there isn't, but my arm still remembers that the world opened up there for a while. I keep thinking of it like the fabric, and I slipped out of alignment for a day. The shirt snapped back overnight, but my skin didn't get the memo. Or maybe the day with the rip belonged to some other version of this morning's shirt, and I woke up with the before while keeping the after on my arm. Story 3. How can 2 people see the same glitch? It was about 3 p.m. this afternoon. Bright, sunny, perfectly clear. The kind of clean light that makes the dust in the air look like glitter and turns every picture frame into a little mirror. I was sitting in the living room on the end of the couch closest to the window. Every blind in the house was open to let the light in kitchen, hallway, living room, so we didn't have a single lamp on. We didn't need them. And then, just for a split second, everything went dark. I don't mean a cloud passed. I don't mean a flicker from the ceiling bulbs, because again, they weren't even on. I mean the world outside went black like someone threw a tarp over the sky and then yanked it off again. It lasted less than a heartbeat. There was stillness and then light again, exactly as before, like the afternoon had coughed. I started to say something to my husband. Did the lights, that kind of half-formed sentence you start when you think you imagine something, but I stopped myself because, again, our lights weren't on. The room looked normal. The house looked normal. I thought, okay, maybe I blinked weirdly. Maybe both eyes squeezed a little longer than I felt it, or I had one of those momentary floaters that blocks the sun for a beat. So I said, never mind. But he looked up from his phone and said, "What were you about to ask about the light flickering outside?" That was it. My stomach did that elevator drop. He had seen it too. Same instant, same flicker, same wrongness. It hadn't been my imagination. It was like someone had switched off the sun for half a second. I don't know how else to describe it. We both did the same thing people do after an earthquake, the casual inventory of the room. We looked at the blinds, the windows, the floor. The AC hum was steady. The refrigerator motor kept its usual drone. Nothing else had blinked or clicked. The TV off didn't reboot. The Wi-Fi stayed connected. There wasn't that whole house gulp a power surge has. It was just the light that vanished, and only the daylight, and only for a blink. We tried to give it a normal answer. A fast-moving cloud? But it was too crisp a change, too total. There weren't any large trees near the windows that could have thrown a sudden shadow across every room at once. A plane? The sun is high and a plane shadow would be shifting, streaking, not a clean snap to black. A bird flock? They can dim the ground, sure, but not like that, and not everywhere at once. A few minutes later, my husband stepped into the other room to look out the back window and said he saw birds circling frantically over the neighborhood. Tight loops, a lot of them, like they were stirred up by something. Whether that was connected or just a coincidence, I can't say. It made the hair on my arms stand up anyway. We weren't dizzy. No headaches. No vision problems for either of us. No meds. No alcohol. It was the middle of the day, and we were both fully alert. We checked the weather app, clear. Checked the utilities outage map just in case, nothing. I even scrolled local posts to see if anyone else noticed anything weird. If they did, they didn't post about it. The part that keeps snagging my brain is how quickly it happened and how complete it felt. Not dimmer, not shaded, like a switch. Like the light itself isn't a continuous thing, but frames cranked so fast you can't see the gaps, and for one frame someone missed. It didn't have drama to it, no thunder, no sound cue, just the absence and then the return, clean as a cut. Story 5. Montrose Cemetery. We used to run a small paranormal research group. Just a few of us, chasing stories of haunted places around South Carolina on the weekends. We had a cheap EMF meter, a couple voice recorders, thermometers, flashlights with dying batteries, and way too much confidence for people who mostly worked day jobs and watched ghost shows at night. One evening we heard about an old abandoned graveyard in Mechanicsville, perched high on a hill overlooking the PD River. The church that owned it had burned down decades ago and later relocated. All that remained up there were the graves. Most were sunken deep into the ground, stones cracked, tilted, or missing entirely. In the middle stood a newer group marker, one big slab listing the names of the people buried there. Kind of a way to honor all the forgotten plots after the individual markers gave up the fight with time and weather. Locals said the site was haunted by two things: the spirit of a young child in antebellum clothing and a dark shadow with glowing red eyes. Supposedly, that second one was tied to a murderer who used to bring victims to that hill because it was so remote. I don't know how much truth there is to that part, but it's the kind of detail that sticks in your head when you tell yourself you're just going to document and not get freaked out. Naturally, we had to see it for ourselves. When we arrived, the first thing we noticed was the darkness. Not normal night, but a heavy, loaded blackness. You couldn't see your hand in front of your face without a flashlight. The forest around the cemetery was so overgrown it swallowed every trace of starlight and moonlight. Even our beams barely cut through it. My friend's girlfriend refused to leave the car. She said the air tasted bad and stayed back with the doors locked. After what happened, I can't blame her. We stepped through the rusting gate and felt the temperature drop. It had been mid-80s outside, humid and sticky with that river heat, and inside the graveyard it was suddenly cold. My thermometer read 62. The change wasn't gradual, it was like we crossed a line. We all noticed it, and nobody wanted to be the first to say it out loud. Our goal that night was to document proof. Anything would do: EV piece, temperature anomalies, a photo of some oddity, an EMF spike we could map to the headstones. We moved slow. The ground underfoot felt wrong, springy 1 minute, sucking the soles of your shoes the next. The deeper we went, the more oppressive it became. The air turned thick, like walking into a damp basement where the walls are too close. One of us said it felt like moving through wet cement. Someone else said the soil had a give to it, like marshmallows gripping your shoes. We tried questions in the dark. Names from the group marker. Is anyone here with us? The usual. We left a digital recorder on the slab and took turns stepping away to avoid crosstalk. Our breath fogged. No joke, fogged, while the hill below the graveyard stayed warm enough that you could hear insects buzzing. There were no insects in the cemetery. No crickets. No night birds. Just the tiny mechanical whine of our equipment and our shoes in dead leaves. Then we heard it. A rush of movement. Not wind. Not an animal scurrying. It was fast and violent and coming straight toward us. We whipped our lights around and saw it. A shape darker than the night itself, the kind of black that has weight, with two red points where eyes should have been. It was bigger than us, hard to measure in the dark, but it felt like it took up space and then some. It surged closer and radiated this anger that shut our mouths. I don't think any of us breathed for a full second. It was like a pressure system rolling over our bodies. The EMF meter went wild, and then dead. The temperature on my readout dipped, blipped, and stuck at 60. Fight or flight finally picked one. We bolted. Every branch in that place was a hand. The twigs grabbed at our sleeves, thorny vines snagged our pants, and it didn't feel accidental. I know how woods catch you, but this felt like the forest was trying to slow us down. We hit the tree line like swimmers clawing out of cold water and ran for the cars. That's when the second hit landed. One of the cars wouldn't start. Brand new battery, just a few months old, now dead as a brick. We tried jumper cables. Nothing. We called a tow truck, and the driver flat out refused to come until daylight. He didn't hem and haw. He just said, "That place is evil at nighttime," like he was quoting a policy. So we sat in the remaining car with the engine running and the heater blasting, because even outside the gate we couldn't shake the cold. My friend's girlfriend cried quietly into her sleeve. Nobody made fun of anyone. We watched the tree lean and didn't talk much. Later, when we finally got the dead car hauled down in the morning, we went through our photos and audio. Dozens of orbs floated in frame after frame. I know, dust, moisture, lens flare. But there was one picture of moss hanging from a tree that looked disturbingly human-shaped, like a man swaying in the dark. You could tell yourself it was pareidolia, right up until you noticed the impression of shoulders. And the EVPs? Those were worse. We caught angry whispers, unintelligible, overlapping, not words we could make out, but emotion we could feel. Something still wanted us gone, and the recorder captured that better than our eyes did. Story 6. Last year in my pre-cal class, my friend tells me that he can make clouds disappear and says that he'll show me. I roll my eyes because, sure, dude, and I can divide by 0. I don't feel like getting up, and I really don't care about that because it sounded ridiculous at the time. But he keeps going, totally serious, and he pulls up these websites and a couple videos of other people doing it, 2 bad phone footage of sky, a voice whispering, "Watch this," jump cuts. I'm still not buying it. His method is simple. You pick a single cloud. You stare straight into it, all focus on that cloud and nothing else. While you're staring, you don't just look at the fluff, you sort of stare through it and imagine it dissipating. In your head you're pulling it apart, seeing the vapor thin out and the blue behind it take over. Meanwhile you chant, either out loud or silently, cloud disappear," like you're nudging the weather with a cheap spell. He says the words are just a handle for focus. You have to believe it's already fading while you watch. I'm like, okay dude, Jedi mind trick the troposphere, why not? He's earnest though. He points out that you don't pick the giant thunderheads. Start with the small, thin ones, the little puffs that already look unsure of themselves. It's about attention, he says. About locking onto a single shape until your brain and the sky agree on what should be there. I mess with him for a minute, hold my hand up like I'm moving a cloud with the force, but that's as far as I go. I don't try it that day. Honestly, it felt silly to imagine my eyeballs evaporating anything. Skip ahead about a week, and we're on the way to the beach with a few other friends from class. Windows down, music loud, everyone talking over everyone. My cloud friend and I are in the back. Let's just say we're not sober, and the vibe in the car is rowdy and loose. The sky that day is a blue sheet with scattered cotton pieces, perfect demo material. Half joking, I start testing what he told me. I pick the first small cloud I see, one of those little detached blobs. I focus like he said. I keep my eyes on the same edges so I don't cheat myself by looking at something else, and I run the words in my head. Cloud disappear, cloud disappear. I try to actually see the blue knit through the white, like dye in water reversing. And I swear it starts to thin. The edges go ragged, and the middle fades like someone's erasing it with low opacity. I blink, thinking I just stared too long, but my friend leans over and goes, "You doing it?" And then, poof, the thing is gone. There's just nothing where it was, and the patch of sky is clean. I get that weird stomach drop you get on a roller coaster. I pick another one. Smaller this time, not touching a bigger formation. I lock in. Chant again quietly. It takes longer, maybe 30 seconds, but it thins and breaks, collapsing into the air like foam. I'm breathing too hard for just sitting in a car. The hair on my arms is up. I do it repeatedly the whole way to the beach, making every cloud that I looked at disappear. I start sorting them, easy ones, medium ones, the occasional stubborn puff that fights me, and then unravels anyway once I commit harder to the image of it not being there. Other people in the car start believing, and trying it as well. At first they're laughing, then they're serious, all of us calling out, "That one far left of the radio tower," and counting down like weird meteorologists. And here's the part one didn't expect. After maybe the 5th or 6th cloud, I feel drained. Not like tired from a run, more like something is pulling energy out through my eyes and the quiet part of my head. It's intangible, but it's there. I lean back and close my eyes, and it's like I've been concentrating for an exam for 2 hours straight. Someone hands me water, and it tastes like I've been thirsty for days. We hit the beach. We jump out, mess around, and I try it once more from the shore just to see. It still works, but slower. I'm a little spooked by how heavy my eyelids feel afterward. The sun feels colder on my skin for a second, like the air's been shifted half a notch. I don't know how to explain that without sounding dramatic. It's subtle, but it's real. Since that day, I've shown this to a few other people. Some laughed. Honestly, I can't blame them. The whole thing sounds like placebo stacked on coincidence. Tiny clouds disappear all the time on their own, right? Wind shear, humidity, convection, whatever. The sky is constantly editing itself. And yet, when you lock onto one and watch it thin exactly where you're watching on repeat, it gets harder to call it luck. Maybe attention is a knife. Maybe our brains, when they clamp down, change the way we read the pattern, and the pattern obliges. I haven't done it in a while because, after doing it to a few clouds consistently, it feels like my mental energy is drained. There's a fog afterward, a little headache behind the eyes, a need to sit somewhere quiet. It changed my perception in a way. Like we all have this sixth sense we just don't know how to use, and when you push on it, it pushes back. Story 7. I can't escape the simulation. Have you had any experiences that make you believe you're in a simulation? I'm not asking for jokes or movie quotes. I mean that very specific, stomach-dropping realization where the floor of real gives an inch and never quite settles back. I've had the distinct experience that my conscious experience is a simulation. Not like I saw a pixel out of place or an NPC loop glitch. It was simpler and somehow worse. I got stuck inside the fact that awareness itself is the thing I can't get outside of. This happened in sobriety, which is important to me because I want a clean read on it. No mushrooms, no weed, no lack of sleep. I had been meditating, nothing fancy, just breathing, noticing thoughts, trying not to chase them, and slipped into a sort of trance. The edges of my attention got smooth. It felt like the difference between hearing a song and suddenly listening to the space around the notes. In that state, I was challenged by the practice, by myself, to be aware of reality directly. Not ideas about it, not memories or plans. Just this. That's when the trap door opened. Because the moment I tried to be aware of reality, I realized I was only ever aware of awareness. The experience kept folding back on itself. I'd think, okay, this is real. And what I'd find there was me being aware of the thought, this is real. Any attempt to step outside of that loop was just another thought happening inside it. Everything I've read since then seems to support the idea that this is not the only reality. Theories about multiverses, quantum weirdness, string theory, simulation hypotheses, take your pick. I'm not qualified to weigh those. What I can say is that I entered a state where the only thing I could confirm was, I am aware, and I couldn't get behind it to check what awareness was touching. It felt like living in a perfect VR headset with no seam to lift. Since then, I've come to believe that I live in a simulation, or at least that I live in only one version of many extant realities. Not because I saw code, but because I can't get past that step where I have to become aware of my consciousness and tell myself, this is reality. I don't know what the other option is. I can't tell myself that my conscious experience is not reality. Saying that would just be another experience inside the same container. It's like trying to look at your own eyeballs without a mirror. Day to day, it shows up in small ways. I'll be pouring coffee and have the thought, this is real, and immediately it collapses into I'm aware of thinking this is real. I'll be walking past a tree and want to touch the bark for proof, but the touch loops into a sensation inside awareness. It's not anxiety exactly. It's more like vertigo. I can still function. I go to work, text people back, pay bills. But there's a faint hum under everything that says, you're inside a thing you can't get outside of. I keep hope by believing that this life, this simulation, this layer, whatever, is a learning experience. That when I die, I'll exit the sim and truly experience reality, or at least something better than this constant awareness of awareness loop. I know that sounds like wishful thinking. It is. But it feels less depressing than the version where my entire life is a simulation for no good reason, like a screensaver running until the machine wears out. My experience with an altered state of consciousness and the resulting ego dissolution leads me to believe life does continue somehow. Not in a streets of gold way, not even necessarily as me the way I'm used to, but as awareness persisting, taking on other shapes. Perhaps after death, you simply wake up with a sudden realization that you were only living one of the many lives to come, or one of the many that already were. Like a dream that felt incredibly long, and then you sit up and think, oh, right, that. I've tried to argue myself out of it. I've read the counterarguments, the brain-making patterns, meditative derealization, philosophical traps. I'd love a boring explanation that sticks. Sometimes I even get a few hours of normalcy, where I just do things and don't narrate them to myself. But if I turn attention back toward the question even a little, the loop is still there, patient, like a door that swings shut the second you notice it's open. Before anyone suggests therapy, I'm not refusing it. I've talked to someone. They were kind. They told me to ground in the body, to do simple things, cook, walk, make eye contact, name objects in the room. Those help in the moment. They are good, practical tools. But none of them answer the part that feels structural. The system itself is built so that the proof of reality is always happening inside experience. The map can never be the territory because I can't step off the map. The territory is drawn as I walk. I realize I could be wrong. Maybe this is just an attentional habit that'll fade. Maybe every mystic in every tradition has stepped in this same puddle and then learned to stop looking down. Maybe this is spirituality, and I'm labeling it with sci-fi because that's easier for my brain. If that's the case, I'm open to it. I'm open to being human again without thinking about it. Story 8. What did I see in Coventry, UK? I was looking at a plane in the sky with my mum at about 4 or 5 in the afternoon when I noticed something weird. It was one of those clear English days you get between rains. Air rinsed clean, sky a pale, rinsed blue, and the kind of sharp light that makes aluminium pop. We were in the back garden, standing by the low brick wall near the roses. I remember the smell of cut grass because my stepdad had mowed that morning, and the neighbor's washing was snapping on the line. A regular passenger jet was crawling along the usual east-west path, small enough that you could cover it with a fingernail, big enough to see the wings and the silver flash when it banked. Then I saw it, a white ball of light. Not the sunbright kind that hurts to look at, more like a pearl, definitely luminous, definitely noticeable, but not blinding. The strange part was that it appeared right next to the plane. Not crossing its path, not trailing it, just there, near it, like it belonged in the same bit of sky. At first I thought it was a reflection on my eyes, one of those little floaters kids see, so I blinked hard and rubbed at my eyelashes. It stayed. It didn't smear or fade like an afterimage. It was a point, round and crisp, like a star that had decided to visit daytime. Then it did something that made my stomach drop. It shook. Not wobbled in wind or drifted, shook violently like it was jittering in place. It reminded me of the way an old TV picture used to buzz when the aerial was wrong, only this was in the sky. It trembled in that one spot for a second, as if charging up, and then it was simply somewhere else, a short hop away from the plane. No arc, no travel in between, no streak line. Here then there. My mum saw it too. I didn't want to say anything in case I was being silly, but she made this little sound, half question, half warning, and said, "Are you seeing that?" We stared. The plane might as well have been a slow fish, and the ball a very curious, very fast lamp. It would appear, shake, pause like it was looking, and then pop, reappear on the other side of the aircraft. Not circling exactly. More like checking points, above, below, forward of the nose, tucked near a wingtip, then back behind the tail. All of this happened in silence. No sonic crack, no small drone whine. Not that there were drones then, this was the early 2000s. Birds carried on chattering in the hedges. The only sounds were normal garden sounds, distant traffic, a dog barking 2 streets over, my mum's bangles clinking when she lifted her hand to shade her eyes. I tried to give it a name while it moved. Venus? No, wrong place, wrong brightness, and Venus doesn't teleport. A balloon catching the sun? Balloons don't appear in clean jumps. A helicopter? Too small, too quick, and nothing about it looked mechanical. It was just a round white thing that existed where it wanted to exist, next to a plane that didn't react at all. It lasted maybe 30 seconds altogether. Each time the ball showed up, it held in one spot for a moment, half a beat, enough for my child brain to go there, and then it zipped to another spot near the plane, again without crossing the space between. It reminded me of those puzzles where you spot the difference in 2 pictures. The difference kept moving. My mum squinted and said we should fetch the camcorder, but by the time either of us moved, it was gone. There wasn't a fade out or a slow drift away. It just didn't appear again. The plane kept going unbothered towards the western edge of Coventry's sky, shrinking to a speck you had to pretend you could still see. We stood there for a while after, not sure how to end the moment. Mum said, well, in that grown-up voice that tries to file things under not for now. I was 6 or 7, somewhere in that soft, elastic age, and my brain built a little shelf for it called Important Weird Thing. We went inside when the neighbor called over the fence to ask if we wanted rhubarb. The world resumed. I'm 31 now. I've never seen anything like it again. Every so often I bring it up to check that I didn't invent it. I'll ask my mum over tea. Do you remember that light near the plane? She remembers. She remembers the jittering, how sharp the jumps were, and how there was no line of travel. Just on and then on somewhere else, she says, tapping the table twice with one finger. We both do the same gesture when we talk about it, a little 2-spot tap in the air. I've tried to reason it out with adult tools. Drones didn't exist for civilians then, and even now they don't teleport. Sun dogs and ice crystals make arcs and halos, not point lights that hop around one aircraft like they're scanning it. Balloons drift and spin. Birds glint and then stop glinting. Camera artifacts explain a lot, but I wasn't looking through a lens. I asked a pilot friend once, and he said maybe it was a reflection off another plane's fuselage briefly catching the sun, but that would slide, not blink between discrete positions like frames skipped on a glitchy tape. If I had to describe the movement in a way that doesn't sound ridiculous, I'd say it behaved like a cursor snapping to anchor points on a drawing. No curves, no momentum, just crisp relocations. The shake, before each hop, is the detail my brain won't let go of. It didn't blur the way a thing fighting wind blurs. It buzzed in place like it was gathering itself or checking that it had the right lock.